Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path of recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
What up, brother?
You know what I love, man?
What's
that? There can be life's bombs lighting off out there. Come in a sober coffee shop, man, just sit down and chat about sobriety, just chat about experience, strength, and hope, and just some good shit that's going on. And
I know, it's good to
tools,
be alive.
right? It's tools on how to handle these bombs, right?
Right.
Who's this guy? Who's this guy?
Hey, we got
sitting
table
here?
for three today. We got Danny G. Hey, Danny.
Danny G's back.
Good morning.
Good.
I can't believe we actually let Danny G come back.
I know. Danny's back.
Love him, man.
Love
this guy.
Danny version 2.0. Yeah, good to have you back in the coffee shop, Dan.
Thank you. Good to be here. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So I gotta call us all out, right? So we do this
again.
We do this at 6 a.m, and but just to take a quick straw poll. Danny, what time did you wake up this morning?
3:30.
Okay.
30.
Okay. Glenn?
1:30.
Whoa, you got me beat. All right. I was 3:30.
I mean, I didn't want to wake up at 1:30. That's just how my life worked today.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't set my alarm for 1:30. I can guarantee you that.
Not a Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely not, man.
So we
It's a
got
tough
two
week.
options here. We can either guzzle our caffeine and act like we're awake, or we can just spend the next half hour snoozing.
Yeah, but
and
isn't it cool?
And it could be a podcast on meditation, and people could just meditate for the 20
Oh,
minutes they're
dude.
listening.
Well, first of all, I love guided meditation. But isn't it cool how we can just sit down and be real
Yeah.
with each other?
Yep.
You know, there's so much bullshit and fakeness out in life, and you go and you're like, oh, I got to be this role. You know, I stopped doing that 10 years ago, and you get me, right? You know what? I'm tired, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I like about you guys is you come in, you just be real with each other, and you start sharing reality, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You feed off that. You get solutions for stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
You know what's tiring was living the way I was living. That was tiring.
That is exhausting.
I mean, it was exhausting. I mean, I had to know where the bottles were. I had to make up stories about where I was.
Talk about artificial intelligence,
Oh,
man.
my
That
goodness.
takes algorithms to, the
I
10th
know.
degree.
Now it's like,
You almost need spreadsheets for that shit.
I know. Now it's just like,
How
it
much
is
do I
what it is.
drink to, not drink too much? How much do I drink so I don't drink the whole bottle? I have some left for the morning.
I was
exhausting.
talking to somebody the other day, and it really recalled she was talking about somebody she knew, and she knew that they were drinking too much because they would stop talking. That was me, because I didn't want to out myself,
Right,
because if
right.
I opened my mouth, I'd be slurring. So I would just stop talking.
Glenn and I never had that problem.
No, we just slurred our way through.
Oh, Dan.
We just slurred.
Oh, that's too funny. So Dan, glad to have you here today. We don't really have a topic to talk to, but I just thought we'd kind of talk a little bit about what we talked about in the car this morning, and that was
That was a lot. We talked a lot.
we did talk a lot, and it was good stuff. And one of the things that really jumped out at me is that, in our old life, we were big thinkers, and I think we used the word grandiose, right?
Oh, I love that G word.
And it wasn't about anything I was trying to build. It was how I was trying to build myself up, right? And so it was my own I had to be grander than I was the previous day. And again, to our point, it was exhausting. And now I've learned to live, and there's a term in the big book called right-sized, right? And I've learned to live right-sized. I mean, I'm more acceptable of where I'm at. I'm much more happy with what I have than I ever thought I would be, because before it was all about the car, it was about the trip, it was about the TV, it was about the press and what people were saying about me, and now I have none of that, and I am so much more fulfilled. Danny, you as well, and I think you called yourself a self-claimed big shot, right? We were big shots.
Sure.
How have you segued into being a small shot?
Well, without using the dumb expression, it's kind of dumbing it down, I think, a little bit. It's a kinder, simpler life. You know, just the things are. You used to have 20 things that were really important, and now it's boiled down to just a couple. So, dumbing it down, I think, is kind of a key. Just keeping it simple.
Keeping it simple.
Keeping it simple.
Yeah, another one of those slogans, Glenn, from AA.
I know, love slogans. Well, it's funny how, we didn't really know each other pre-AA rooms, right? But I got a snippet of Dan's big shotness, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm down, we're based out of Chicago, so I'm downtown Chicago, right? And I'm at this big highfalutin hotel, and I think I met Dan there one day. Dan, I met you there one day for lunch or something, and everybody knows Dan.
Everybody.
He's
the mayor.
Dan's better than the mayor in Chicago, right? So I'm just chatting with Dan. I'm trying to get a flavor, a feel for why this happened. He goes, I did this building, I did that building, I did
right.
And I'm like, okay, big shot.
Yeah.
And then we had a chance to go to a recovery fundraiser dinner together. Mm-hmm. And there's 4 guys that Dan invited, friends, colleagues, friends, right?
Both. Yep.
And they were the 4 of the biggest shots. And I'm like, holy shit, man, who am I sitting here with, right? But I love keeping it simple, right? And that fed us back then, right? Whether it was real or not. Mm-hmm. For me, a lot of the grandiosity, a lot of the big shot was fake, or it was a perception. I wanted you to think I was a big shot, right? But when you really dive into AA and learn to live differently and keep it simple, I'll underline that, that just seems to crumble when you start using that word humility. Humility and big shot kind of don't work together,
right?
And so when I think of right-sized, I love that that word right-sized. I think of page 556 in the big book, and it's kind of when I read that, it clicked as being my fuel for kind of my drinking cycle, right? And what it was is because of my grandiosity, right? My expectations of life and myself and others were super high. And then my performance was, especially because I was drinking, was low, right? So that gap, because I was trying to be a big shot, I was trying to be that high level person, but I was living low level. That gap, I couldn't deal with it. I mean, that was a person, I couldn't deal with it because all it did to me was scream failure, right? So I would drink to deal with those feelings of I am not living up to my grandiosity. I'm not living up to who I'm trying to show people I'm trying to be.
Yeah,
right?
You set
so
such unreasonable expectations.
Right. So then what happened when I drank is I got greater grandiosity, right? And that bar went even higher. And because I'm drunk now, my performance went even lower, and it increased that gap even more. And so
talk about algorithms.
Oh,
yeah, right.
Absolutely, man. You need some pivot tables for that sucker, right? So and so in it's a little bit different when you're at 0 and you're trying to brush your teeth, right? It's hard to be a big shot in that scenario, and that's where I was at, and I started to become real with myself and accept I was at 0. And then all of a sudden that expectation bar lowers in a major way, right? Especially when you're focused on a day, you're just trying to get through the day. Hey, here's 5 things I'm trying to do today, right? You're not trying to, run the world. You're not trying to be Elon Musk. You're just trying to win the day. And then all of a sudden you're not drinking, right? And you have better tools, and you're starting to use tools. Your performance is better, right? And then there were some times, and still are some times where my performance actually exceeds my expectations. And I've never had that in my life until I had sobriety.
Right.
So maybe that's right sizing.
Well, I think the rooms help right size too, because the beautiful thing about the rooms is that people don't really care about your persona. They care about your sobriety, right? So the relationships are like when you and I talk, I mean, let's put it this way. I don't know what 99.9% of the people in the rooms of AA do for a living. It's just not a topic. What is a topic is our sobriety, right? That's what's a topic. And so when you bust down all that fluff, it really just comes back to just being you for that day. And I love what you said, Glenn, because it is expectations. And if you're just doing the next right thing, it's pretty easy to stay right-sized because you can't get too ahead of yourself, you know.
Well, it's another saying that I've always loved is expectations being premeditated resentments. You know, it's resentments against mostly myself.
Myself, right?
You know,
just
it
posted
wasn't
that thing, right?
others, sure, but I mean, it's myself. I had these high standards that I could never meet, and I drank.
Yeah.
And, you know, dumbing it down again and not having expectations. And that's work. I mean, sometimes, you know, what do you got going to do today? You got your plan going.
Yeah.
Nothing. You know, not that I'm not motivated.
Right.
But, you know, keeping them in check, that's sometimes a challenge. But it's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have found the more I expect of others, the more disappointed I am.
Yeah.
The more resentments they start brewing.
Yeah. But
And the more that happens, the bigger the resentments, and then then bad behavior starts kicking in.
But I also, towards myself, I mean, I have high you used to have high expectations of myself, and not that I think less of myself, but
so how do you handle that today?
Oh, you know, I was listening to one of the earlier sessions about acceptance. You know, that's kind of where it starts, right? I mean, it's accepting that things aren't going to, I'm not in control, first off, that I have to adapt, you know, that I have to have the right attitude, that no matter what happens, you know, sobriety's first.
Right.
And dumbing it down and keeping it simple.
Right.
You know, everything else is just gravy.
Right.
You know, and failure is part of life.
Yeah, I think
You know,
part of
or
it is, you know, and I know you and I know how your brain works and I love it. You know, part of it, expectations is just focus on today, right? You can only generate so much grandiosity out of one day, right? So if you work the big book, page 86, it says, hey, upon awakening, here's what you do for your day. You plan your day, right? There's only so much of the world you can conquer in one day, right? Now, if you let your brain go, well, what's going to happen this year or next 10 years, next 5 years, you know, your brain can start to get really wacky, right?
Which is why I need you guys, because you know where I'm at in life right now.
Right. But you know what?
Yeah,
but you know what? One of the ways to really win in sobriety, focus on today. Anybody can put together a winning day.
It's a 24-hour.
Yep.
24 hours is all that's in a day, and most people sleep 8 of those. Not us, but most people sleep most of that. So that only leaves you with, you know, a short little window of time of things that you can accomplish. I liken it to the guy who's out of work, right? And he gets online and he applies at 52 jobs, you know, by noon. Okay. Now, really, those are the 52 jobs that he was qualified for and that he wanted. What are you going to do? You know, and I've heard their wives browbeat them. Well, you're not looking for a job all day. Well, you can only look for a job so much of the day. I mean, right? Does that make any kind of sense?
It's expectations.
Expectations.
It's
yep.
laying out. I'm telling you, when I deal with people, I win when I have zero expectations. I just do. People around me, and you know, my brain, the way my DNA says, is especially kids. You know, I'm like, I used to do that when I was 8. You know, I never missed. You know, and yet, you know, I just say, hey, man, I know I live better when I expect zero from other people. I'm not disappointed.
What do you expect out of yourself, though? Let's flip it around a little bit, because I know you're pretty self-driven. What do you expect from yourself, and how do you manage when yourself doesn't hit your 10?
So first of all, let me answer the second question first. I give myself a break.
Okay.
You know, I'm like, hey, I remind myself, hey, I'm human, right? Because there's some weekends, right? I used a lot of weekends on catch up and planning and try to get ahead, and there's times like I'm just absolutely exhausted on the weekends, right? So I'll sit there in my chair and veg for an hour, and I'm like, man, I could have done this, I could have done that, right? I'm always trying to push myself, but then I give myself a break.
Okay.
I'm like, man, dude, you worked 80 hours this week,
right?
You know, just take an hour. Taking that hour will help you in the next 5, right? So I have a better awareness and acceptance of situations in my life today. What I do is I plan my day very aggressively to try to maximize, try to win the day, right? And I also know life gets in the way, you know, because you know what? something may come up. Somebody may need me outside of my plan, right? And I got to be able to available and ready to serve. But I really don't compare myself to others anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I really cut back on most of that, if not all of that. And I compare myself to how I was last week, how I was last month, how I was last year. And I'm a different person than I was last year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know how you were, but I used to compare myself so much to Drunk Mike. That's easy.
Yeah,
Drunk Mike pissed
I
himself.
stopped doing that years
You
ago.
know? Sober Mike doesn't piss himself. It's amazing.
Progress.
Progress, right. But Dan, how do you handle that? When you come into setting expectations for yourself, how do you handle, when you maybe fall a little short? Do you do the same thing? You give yourself a break, or
Not enough. I mean, it's work.
Yeah.
I mean, it is work. As Glenn said, it's a smart thing to do is just take an hour and just veg.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer comes into it then for a lot. For me, a lot of times I go where my safe spot is. I go to a meeting.
Yeah, right, there you go.
I need to be around other folks that, might not be having a great day.
Right.
So
Helps you get out of you.
Right.
yeah.
Helps you get out of you and into somebody else,
Yep. So it's I just think I don't know. Like I said, I'm just sitting here in a coffee shop with a couple of guys that I know are achievers, and I am an achiever, but I'm setting my course and my focus on different achievements than I was before. Before it was all about what were people thinking about me, and now it's more about what am I thinking about myself.
I think my biggest achievements today are my contribution to others.
Yeah.
I shared with you last night. I had an opportunity to connect with a guy, and I literally had tears in my eyes that I had the opportunity to, use my experience, strength and hope, and tools, and help a guy through a tough night.
Mm-hmm.
That is humbling, and talk about grateful. I'm like, now I'm starting to realize, okay, I went through hell. I'm using my mess for a message. I'm using whatever the phrases are, right?
Yep.
I love having Danny G in here, man. He is such an inspiration to me.
He is. He's a rock star. And Dan, you're coming up on an anniversary. Which is pretty strong.
Yeah. A couple months, 3 years. So it's been great. It's been great.
I love it. I love on social media. They're like, hey, next month I'll have a year. Mm-hmm. So I always jump in. I'm like, yeah, in 11 years I'll have 20.
Because you need to win.
That's right.
I'm just trying to be a jag-off to people.
My favorite story is when you were in a meeting and the guy came in and he was telling a story and he said he blew a 4.8, and your sponsor looked at you and said, Glenn, leave it alone.
I know. Well, and that just happened. My sponsor Timmy was in a meeting, and a guy comes in. He's been in like so many hospitalizations and blew a 4.7. And I'm like, Timmy, I said, I either want to be the best or the absolute worst.
That's right.
So there's people out there that my worst was a 4.6, and there's people that have edged me, But at 4.6, I had a brain bleed, so that was my max.
Don't try to exceed it.
No.
No. That's a record. That's a record you don't want to win. Right.
So, no, that's great, man. So Danny, what's your next steps with the program? How are you going to grow?
How am I going to grow? I'm going to, like you said, help others.
Yep.
I mean, it's dumbing it down is really love and service.
Yeah.
I had the benefit of going to Father Ashley's addiction center out in Maryland, and that's all it was, love and service. We all have a lot of different things, but that's what it's come down to. I struggled for a long time. What's the meaning of life? Is it because I want a new car, I want a successful marriage, be a great father? All this happens if it's just simple.
Right.
Love.
I can tell you, not to tell you, my epiphanies. The car has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
In fact, I do better with my old beater.
Yeah.
I just do.
My 2005 Honda. It sits in the garage.
Danny and I are going to a retreat in a couple of weeks. That should be fun. I know that's one of your 26, 27
once
things
a
you
year.
do.
You're up
year.
to 27 now?
Yeah.
No, 26.
Yeah. It'll be 27 soon. But that's how you grow.
No, I am not looking for anything else. I'm looking to do what I'm doing. I'm looking to deliver. That's my word for the year on what I've got on my plate right now. Nothing new. But, things always come up. That dude last night came up just out of the blue, and that was meant to be.
Right.
That's just how this shit works, man.
And that was just a guy that you met online.
Online and just shared a point of desperation. He was at absolute zero, and I instantly connected because I was reminded in the second of my absolute zero. Mm-hmm. And what I remembered at my zero, there were people there to help.
Right.
And I felt the finger of whoever on right in the middle of my chest saying, "You're there, you're here now, you help. It's your turn." Boom. I felt it right in the middle of my chest, and
And I can say, Dan, I've seen you operate in the same thing. I mean, every time Dan and I...
both you guys do.
Yeah, well, Dan, we start out the morning with a text, just to acknowledge we're still breathing and still sober, and then we work our day. But, we work the program together, but we also work life together. And so I've had a lot of challenges in the last couple of months. Danny's been there constantly. So when I face those challenges, I know I'm not facing them alone because I've got Glenn, I've got Dan to share my journey with. And again, at the end of the day, you guys only care about my sobriety. I mean, that's the most thing you care about. But I find that you both serve me by caring for my scenario, So my sobriety is one thing, but you guys both are service. You do so much service to me just by being there. Those extra calls in the afternoon. How are things going? What can I do? What can I do? That's Dan's. What can I do? Well, that's his go-to phrase.
And guess what? In the rooms, there's never a lack of folks that need help.
Right.
Even a coffee chat, some love, even hey, just a check in. Some people just need to check in and they get value from that.
Yep. Danny, it's been good to have you, man.
Yeah.
What's your parting shot for the person out there who's not feeling so great right now?
Oh, wow. Reach out, be connected, stay connected.
Yeah.
That's the key. However, if it's by Zoom or by phone or by text or in person.
Or by social media. So we have
a lot of tools.
On Instagram.
Yeah.
Sober.Coffee.net. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
No, it's Sober.Coffee.
Sober.Coffee.
Sober.Coffee. No .com, no .net.
Right. And the email is podcast@sober.coffee. So we're always responsive to that.
That's correct. We're on social media. Just look up Sober.Coffee Podcast.
Yeah.
Connection.
Love you, man.
Love you too.
Love you, brother. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.
Stay safe in the city of Chicago. Beautiful city.